But if they have to do something, they have to start listening better. And they have to start asking questions of everybody. How do you like it here? Start getting the pulse of things that are going. Find your biggest, especially if you're in the corner office, so to speak, who's your biggest fan? Who really believes in you? And say, hey, I want to get things better here. I want to reduce our turnover. I want to make people like being here. What do we need to do? And just start from there.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that still has that new car smell. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I'm Jake Sanders, he's Paul Julius, and we're here with you today to talk about all the things you need to know, and none of the stuff you don't need to know, right, Paul? I mean, we've whittled it down.
We are your singular best source of information for everything.
For right now. I mean, we're lean.
Immediately. Yeah.
Immediately.
For right now.
We're prescient. A lot of earnestness.
Yeah. We try hard.
Yeah, Paul's a little coquettish. I'd say I'm a bit of a dapper, gentleman, when the lights are low.
He is.
Anyway, let's talk about let's light up a smoke and talk about what's on the show today.
Let's talk about anything else. Okay, today on the show, we're going to talk about millennials and law firm culture with an article from law.com. Then we go deep on culture with lawyer and author Eric Farber. And as usual, we test our guest patience with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today is from law.com. It's by Frank Reedy. It's entitled 5 Challenges Millennials Pose to Law Firm Culture. It was written in October. I thought this was interesting because the 5 challenges that were posed by those darn millennials in October are now, because of social distancing and the behavior changes going on in society, are now just table stakes for businesses. Especially law firms. So I guess maybe we can go through the 5 and talk about them individually. I'll list them here. 1, communication. 2, culture. 3, collaboration. 4, the incentives. And 5, remote work and sort of work-life balance. So, Paul, this first one, communication, those darn millennials, they were using social media in October, and it was confounding the non-millennial staff of law firms. The quote is, "It's a real struggle in the organization between the partners that use social media and those that don't." So I just think it's funny. What's your take here? Let's do a back and forth. We're
going to go one. Okay.
Let's
all right.
try
We're
it.
going to do like call and response here.
Yeah. What's your thoughts here? I'll lay it down and then you give me a take. These darn millennials here with communication.
I think there has to be a balance. I don't know that we would necessarily expect any business to suddenly start, using like Twitter DMs or something like that.
Right.
But at the same time, I think, and I like this, that, there's a level of accessibility and communications that millennials expect. And it is digital. And I honestly, I think it's great. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, to your earlier point before we were recording, millennials isn't quite as neat a group as we think it is. It's more of a psychographic thing. And then what I think of it is more of the digital inclination. And those can be older folks and the youngins, but millennials are like 40 now. I mean, like, as far as like the official demographic, so who can wield social media the best and for what purpose? We talk later with Eric Farber about how communication is important with clients to set the expectations and to deliver on the promises and then to show the culture, which, in turn is the second thing that millennials were doing in October that were confounding the legal world was the culture. Millennials are focused. They're going into a firm wondering about the culture more than just the billable hours. Eric talks to us later about culture is listed as how many hours a week they're expected to work. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
So it's not about like who works there or what type of, environment it is or how they help you nurture a career, in the legal profession. It's just like, we're expecting you to work 200 hours a week. Well, but what do you think? I mean, so here's the idea. Now, what's your hot take on culture?
Millennials get a lot of crap over this about being kind of a me generation, but I think really every generation except my generation, except Generation X. we were the original, latchkey kids, man.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Everybody forgot about us. The point is, it's difficult to separate work-life balance in law in the first place. So, I don't know that, again, this is, I'm not trying to like poke a hole in everything here. I just look at it as like, hey, they're kind of right. I mean, there should be a line. We can't necessarily do things this way. And it should be, I don't think there's anything wrong with making the workplace a little more flexible, a little more personable, like we talked to Eric about later, maybe a place that people like to work.
Right.
I don't know. There's a good concept, right?
Yeah. He mentioned that a lot. What do people like to work here?
I mean, it's
no
true.
one asked that question, but it's, are you making enough money? Are you hitting your goals? Are you bringing in the cases? Are you making it rain? And so that's the culture. Yeah. The culture is performance based versus, actual culture, cultural metrics, which I don't know. It's like, how much singing is there?
I mean, I've been put off by some places too that seem a little too millennial. You know what I mean? Like we're all, all the pictures on their website are of like them out,
playing ping
pounded
pong
beers at a baseball game, or playing ping pong in the break room or whatever.
That's a good segue, because the number 3 reason, the challenges that millennials were posing to law firm culture was collaboration. It says in this article on law.com that they're thriving to work. They want to be collaborative on everything. And then they mentioned open workspaces, which I was like, you know what? No, I think that misses the point. How I interpreted it was Slack or project management software or a good case, a client resource management tool that can help you keep eyes on and collaborate on a document or on a case, or, I could see how millennials might, quote unquote millennials. I hate it, but the truth is, I'm just going to use it clean. But millennials are looking for that ability. I'm not a fan of Slack, but I use Zoom for chat, and then I use, Gmail I favor that. I like the idea of working together with you on a project, and I could see how maybe people would want that. But now that's all you have is the Google Doc that you can share if you're in a remote setting.
Yeah, and Slack's. I think Slack is a little bit. It really is about like communities and chat. It's a little bit more like Discord, I think, than really like Zoom.
Right. Okay. Fair.
But I get what you're saying. Like being able to just tap whoever or put together a quick group to just chat is invaluable. Being able to, hey, let's all take a look at this real quick and screen share. Same thing. And I think you're completely on point that it's going to be more virtual if it isn't already. I mean, Google Docs is brilliant. There's no, like, I can't imagine having my kids use it for school. Like I can't imagine having any project that I have to work on, either part of a team or leading a team that we couldn't just get in there, update, make changes, make comments. I like, who does it differently now? I don't even understand.
Yeah.
And as far as open workspaces go, I hope that this one good to come out of all of this at the end is that is the end of those things, because that is the worst idea ever. How it even made it this far. I hope finally they're like, look, for health reasons, we're not doing this.
We're going to close down the WeWork.
Don't even get me started. I could do an entire episode on why open workspaces suck.
Well, it's one of those things that just a sort of a foregone conclusion that you had about millennials. Oh, you guys love your open workspaces. You love your avocado toasts.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges that the fourth challenge is incentives. Actually, millennials are a bit more frugally minded. People coming out of law school today are coming out with more law school debt than ever. One of the things that millennials are looking for is incentives. Beyond salary, could you pay off some of the law school debt? Could you, create an ability to build on skills or build out, a stronger career path, in the legal profession that isn't just an associate partner, climb the ladder kind of, trajectory. People are looking for that now. And I just think that's obvious. The amount of people who say that on the show are, myriad. So I don't know. It's hard to argue with this. Yes, of course, incentives, but if it's still on that culture and you're expected to, do 200 hours a week, that's the incentive is you just get to be a top gun,
Yeah. Or, you make partner and now you're,
right.
Getting a certain percentage of profits and stuff like that.
A timeshare on the yacht.
Yeah. Which I guess is okay. There's a lot of that. And I guess, that the argument from the management side could be like, well, hey, why shouldn't we do it that way? If you want to, produce and you then, are you're going to reap the benefits of your productivity.
Yep.
Then you could use that money
do whatever
to pay off your law school.
Exactly right.
Why should we commit to that?
And there's the whole thing. Like, why should we commit to this?
Mm-hmm.
And you made a really interesting point. Millennials are the me generation, but really everyone else is well, you're so entitled. You want to be available all the time. You want to be on social media. You care about collaboration. You want incentives beyond that. You want to work remote. The fifth one is this burnout. Millennials are very conscious about work life, and they also want to have the ability to work remote. In October, this was posed as a challenge that the law firm culture and profession were facing. And now these are all table stakes.
Yep.
So now when people are saying, oh, you're so needy, you were so needy, you needed to have communication and then you needed to know about culture. And now in the span of, 10 or 5 days after, things got serious, lockdowns are happening, you can't run a business without any of this.
Yep. Turns out they were right, huh?
Turns out they were right. Those darn millennials. So, but focus on culture, focus on these things. I think this is a great article. And Eric, our guest later, is a lawyer who has managed to pivot, saw this kind of change coming and switched his whole firm to remote, in the weeks leading up to, the change. And it's kind of it's an inspiring story, but it happened because of the people, not because of the tech or the prowess. It's because he actually believed in the culture and the people, and his law firm was able to make a pivot. That's one of the bigger parts of the interview.
So you put that. That's like a hanging curveball for me.
There it is.
Right as about what I was about to say was that, if you have people who are good at what they do, they will find ways to do it wherever they are. And aren't those the people you want working with you? If we're saying, hey, we should be using, Clio or CasePeer or something like that. Like, oh yeah, we're looking at it. Well, now you have to. I hope there's just this little nudge there to say, what, these, millennials, But really what they are is that these are not only are these people who are going to be working with you, but these are, keep in mind, these are people who are going to be needing your service, that same generation. So if they're saying this is how we like to communicate, you know, just like Eric says, you have to listen.
Excellent point, dude. If you are making these adjustments for your partners or staff inside your law firm, think of the clients, your potential clients that match that demographic that are coming to you. They want the same thing. What a great point, man. Well, but you would only be able to get there if you listen to them, tried to understand and ask questions. And that's, you know, somebody who tells you how to do it and who's going to tell you how to do it right now.
Yeah.
Is our guest, Eric Farber. So stick around, stay tuned. More coming up on Lawsome.
Lawsome continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
The internet can be a cold and unforgiving place. Every day, thousands of law firm websites go unvisited and unfairly labeled as worthless due to the inattention or misguided attempts at do-it-yourself marketing by their owners. Poor optimization and bad design principles have left these sites unable to realize the full potential of the digital landscape they're forced to exist in, and they're now trapped on page 3 of the search results in an endless cycle of bad management, leading to poor results, leading to disillusionment and loss. There's hope for these neglected websites in the form of a digital marketing company focused exclusively on law firms. Since 1999, Consultwebs has helped hundreds of lawyers connect to thousands of clients across the country using sound marketing principles based off an exhaustive track record of marketing campaigns that have already proven to be successful. If your website is underperforming, call Consultwebs at 800-872-6590 and get the clicks it so desperately needs. Please don't let another day full of unvisited pages go by. Take that step and call today for them.
And now, a Lawsome interview.
As the CEO and Chief Legal Officer of Pacific Workers' Compensation Law Center, Eric Farber is on a mission to change how law firms operate by showing lawyers the value of putting culture first. In his new book, The Case for Culture, Eric gives lawyers the wisdom and tools they need to transform themselves and their culture for the better. Eric, welcome to Lawsome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about your book first, The Case for Culture. What's it about? What led you to write it? And what do you hope lawyers take away from it?
Well, it's about bringing some of the things from modern day business, I think is a good way to put it, into the law firm setting. What really led me to write it was it's really about the story of how we went from 4 people just over 5.5 years ago to close to 50 in 2 different offices in a small workers' compensation law firm in the Bay Area. And I was invited to speak at CRISP Summit, Video Summit down in Atlanta a few years ago. And I'm friends with Michael Mogul, and he invited me to come talk about culture a little bit and gave me a whole 12 minutes to talk about it. And I had a very good response from it. And so Michael said, hey, he had just written a book as well. And he said, I'm going to hook you up with my publisher. I think you need to start writing some of this stuff down. And that's really where the book came from. But the story of the book came from Pacific Workers, which is the law firm that I founded 5.5 years ago. It was it's very different than what I was doing for the vast majority of my career, and now I really enjoy practicing law again. I put air quotes around practicing law because I don't actually practice law anymore.
How did you zero in on culture? I think really people get obsessed with fixing people. Like, I wish I could just fix everybody and then the culture would be good. I think like there's a little bit of push and pull of being natural and nurturing things. Can you speak to sort of the difference in between that? I mean, most people don't want to interject and tell people how to behave. Can you sort of speak to that? How do you interject in culture?
Well, I think you brought up a lot of different things, and the
Sorry.
first thing that no, I think the first thing is people need to understand truly what culture actually is. People have a misnomer about what culture actually is, and there's been a lot of companies over the years that have had good cultures, and I think we're just starting to sort of see what cultures are about. At the center of any organization are the people. And if you're trying to fix people, you got the wrong person there. You don't have to
Right.
fix good people, right? You may have to train a good person. But when I think of culture, there's a lot of different things that come into culture, but it really starts with a mission of where the company is going. What is the company's story, and what are the company values and principles, and operating as a principled and company that has values. One of our core values in our company is empathy. So we always act with empathy. And then it's about getting the right people. And you may have somebody who's great sitting in front of you in an interview, but they might not be great for your company and your culture. They may be great for something else. If you're bringing in somebody who's a loan negotiator, might be super what they do. They may be an incredible performer, but they're how they fit into the company culture might be terrible. There's performance, and then there's sort of culture, and they're not necessarily the same thing. You don't necessarily want a high performance culture, quote unquote. Everybody loves to say we're a growth culture, we're a high performance culture. That's not necessarily a great thing, because that might mean that people are not doing a great job for the clients, but they are making goals. They may be blowing out 12 cases, to make their numbers, but not actually servicing clients and maximizing their cases. They could have made their numbers with three cases if they did it properly. So we're a culture that tries to focus on maximizing cases. This was a problem that we actually had because we were too goal focused on money, right? So there's so many different things that you're looking at when you're talking about culture. It's not necessarily about what people think it is. And I talk a lot about this in the book. Culture is discipline, is one of the things that I say, which is I just got off the phone with one of our lawyers. He's a great lawyer, but he's also a little bit of a rebel. And I literally got off the phone about 3 minutes before, and I said, hey, I got to go talk about this stuff I'm trying to get you to do. Right? It's, because we've now transitioned in a way through COVID and coronavirus, we've transitioned to home, and we've set up these new protocols for communication. And communication is key to making sure that teams do what they need to do. Lawyers can be rebels, and they don't want to be told what to do, so to speak. And any organization has some great people that might be high performers, and other people who are great people who may be lower performers but are really good at everything else. And Gary Vee, Simon Sinek, Mark Cuban, they all say the same thing. Don't focus on high performance as much as focus on high culture.
So picking different data points, now it's all data. You said you were speaking about COVID, post-COVID, this social distancing, the remote law firm, the virtual law firm. I mean, you said you've done 10, interviews. There's been 500 webinars, in the last 2 minutes on this topic. Transitioning to a law from home kind of environment. How are people maintaining their cultures, and how are they keeping that communication consistent? And what are your thoughts here, just on just riff on the COVID?
Well, look, I started following this in early January when a good friend of mine sent me a video from Wuhan. Somebody in the health ministry in China. He sent a video that I literally said to him, if this was going on, wouldn't it be on world news? I had just returned from a trip to Costa Rica on February 28th, February 27th. And started seeing more and more. And I thought, we live in an urban area. We're in Oakland, California. Usually when I talk about safety, we're talking in a company, we're talking about emotional safety. We're a law firm, so we're talking about emotional safety more than we're talking about physical safety. But you've also got to think about the physical safety of people. I really dug in to learn as much as I could about things, and I realized that this is a very contagious thing. And so I looked at my team and I said, we need to transition to home. I brought in our intake director. I said, how quickly could you guys be home, your intake department? She said, within a day. And so I said, great, you're working from home starting tomorrow, and develop a plan. Then next, brought in the case management team and said, and they're a much bigger team. And I said, how long could it take you guys? They said a week. I said, I want it done in 3. I said, that's okay. But if you can do it in stages, let's get everybody home, in a shorter time frame. The next day, we saw that things were ramping up, and that they were talking about possible orders, et cetera. I said, okay, let's get everybody home. So from the time we decided to start doing this and we put a week deadline on ourselves, we were actually home in about 36 to 48 hours for everybody.
Unreal. And what made that possible was strong case management systems, cloud-based servers. What talk about the infrastructure that you had in place that made that pivot possible.
I'm going to tell you the biggest thing that made that possible. People. We have the right people. That's number one. All the rest can be figured out, right? But we also do have good technology, and we have systems. Some of those had to change. How do you mail stuff out when, you're not sitting beside a printer, right? So we had to change some of that stuff, but God bless my team. They did a phenomenal job, and we had a new process within a couple of days. But people are at the center of any technology, right? And then we started setting up some protocols. I'm a big believer in the 5-minute meeting. So I still run marketing with our company. We still have our morning meeting every day, and we try to, talk about the stuff we got coming up, and, making our plans and really instilling on the importance of this time. If there's one thing that is important during this is to make sure that people are still coming together, is to make sure that they still are seeing each other. So we do a lot of Zoom stuff. We also use Microsoft Teams. You have to ask yourself as a leader, and I don't care if you're the head of the company, the head of a department, or the person sitting next to you, is how do you want to be remembered through all this? How does a company want to be remembered? Tillman Fertitta, the billionaire who owns the Houston Rockets and one of the largest hospitality companies in the world, just laid off 40,000 people. Where Mark Cuban, on the other hand, is paying everybody out of his own pocket if he has to. That's going to come back on Tillman Fertitta for many, many years to come. He will always be remembered as the billionaire who laid everybody off.
Specifics about culture, and kind of steering back to the law firm here. How can you identify if there's a toxic culture, and what can they do about it? And specifically with lawyers, I'm not pointing fingers here, but I'm just saying, but what if they're contributing to the toxic culture?
Right.
Well, of course The easiest way to spot a toxic culture is very simple. What's your turnover like? The average turnover in America is about 48% in a company. And that's insane. And the average turnover in a company that is listed with great culture is about 14%. So that's a lot of money. Everybody, if you really, I've seen a lot of different calculations on what an employee turnover actually costs. I like Adam Robinson's take on it, which is Adam Robinson wrote the book, The Best Team Wins, and on predictive hiring. I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic book. And he says everybody costs about 10 times their annual salary. So if you're paying $50,000 for somebody, if you're hiring somebody for $50,000, that's a $500,000 decision. And so that's an enormous amount of money. So when people walk out the door, the true cost of turnovers is not just in putting an ad out and how much time it takes, et cetera, et cetera. It's far more than that. So turnover is one of the things, and it's really the one thing that got me off my butt and said, okay, I got to fix this, because we had very high turnover at the beginning. And I just saw, even on the low end, it was costing us on our turnover for a small company, about $500,000 a year.
Wow.
And that was just not okay with me. Not only was it not okay to lose that kind of money, but it was not okay that people didn't like coming to work. That itself wasn't okay with me. So I really started thinking about what are those things. And I just reached outside to get that kind of help, because I couldn't really find anything on it in law firms. And there wasn't really a lot written about this in law firms. In fact, there's a site that breaks down sort of the big firms and what it's like to work at these big firms for graduates.
It's like Glassdoor or something like that.
It's actually a company out of England, and I can't remember the name of the the website, but it's pretty big. And if you look on the column that has to do with culture, pretty much all it says is how many hours you work. But one of the other important aspects of it is it doesn't say anything about the other people that are actually there in the firm. Right. Law firms are notorious for the caste system. And I knew when we started our firm that it was almost more important to focus on the non-lawyers, the team members who were non-lawyers, than it was the lawyers. And that's been a difficult balancing act through the whole thing. But I wanted to make absolutely certain that we were truly focusing on everybody, from the person in the mailroom to the person answering the phone to, because they're all responsible for creating the client experience.
Oh boy. Oh, you can tell you're a marketer, man. I mean, you're just like, you just described my dream. Everybody's involved. Everybody's a part of this. Well, so here's a question too. If it's up to someone to hire, they're thinking diversity. They're thinking inclusion, maybe. They're thinking a rainmaker. What are the best reasons to hire somebody?
Well, you hire for culture, which means to me more than anything, you're hiring for values. Everybody, and I don't care what company it is, if you don't have a stated mission of what your company is about and what your law firm is about, you're doing it wrong. And there's great examples of this through history, through corporate America. Coca-Cola, which is the easy example, is not that they sell sugar water, obviously. It's that their product makes people happy. I want to buy the world of Coke and keep it company, right? That's a mission-driven marketing right there. Law firms have this embedded mission that is so much easier to sell than sugar water, and they just don't really do it, or they do it too heavy and it's too overpowering. Whether it's Goldberg and Osborne's The Eagle, whether it's Law Tigers, which I think they have done an amazing
Love the
job.
Tigers, yeah.
Yeah, they're great at this stuff, right? But this started way back in the 80s with, the Eagle and the Wolf and the,
love it, the Hammer and
right, exactly. They all have something, right?
Right.
And I'm not in the same sphere as doing that for us, but law firms are by its nature mission driven. We serve justice to people, and we speak for people who can't speak for themselves. That's what lawyers do. That's an easy sell, and it should be an easy sell. It's amazing how many people just don't get it right. And then what you're doing from there is really, creating what are the values going to be. Well, we have a set of principles that we live by, and we don't breach them. And I think part of modern day capitalism so much has been abusive capitalism, where ethics go out the window. In fact, I think Milton Friedman even said something about cultural norms in ethics. and rather than just saying ethics, right? Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, and we have a set of values. We bring those to the table from the first second we put the job ad out, and we are also really we're finding people that join our mission and join in our values. So what I mean by that is we're not trying to oversell this job. If you're applying to us to be an assistant case manager, which you could be for a while, right? There are certain things that are going to be about that job that people might not like. I mean, I don't want to be on the phone for 6 hours a day, but I'm not supposed to do that job. I wouldn't get hired in that job.
Right.
So we find people that are totally fine with being on the phone for 6 hours a day. I actually tell this story, and this is in the book. You know, we're interviewing somebody, and we do this stuff, sort of like the acceptable or the not acceptable. We're interviewing on the phone, right, to make sure that they're comfortable with all these things. So when they apply for the job, and we go through the resumes, and we try and get about 100 resumes, we then say, okay, there's going to be about 10 people when you get 100 resumes that might fit with this job. We're going to phone interview those people, and we get on the phone. We actually send them the actual job description and say, this is the job description. And this goes beyond the job post. This is the job description. Take a look. If you still like the sound of this job, set up a meeting, set up a phone meeting. Then we get on the phone, we do the same thing, and we really go through stuff. And I was interviewing. This in the early days of our new process, and I remember interviewing somebody who said, we kind of got what do you like, what do you not like every day? And I said, and she said, I really like people, but I've learned in my last job that I just don't like being on the phone all that much. Well, we were lucky to learn that now. And she was great. She was great. She would have been great, except for the fact that the core physical thing that she had to do in the job was 6 hours a day that she didn't like to do. And I said to her, you sound great. You're going to land a great job, but this is not the job for you because you've got to spend about 6 hours on the phone every day. And she said, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that job. Well, boom, we found out before she starts, I'm not trying to hoodwink anybody, and I hope they're not trying to hoodwink us. So as you go through this predictive hiring process, people weed themselves out. And it's important to just listen.
I think one thing that I noticed when I was a marketing director for a personal injury law firm for 3 years, and I sat in on a couple hirings, interviews and stuff, but I was the worst at it because I was hoodwinking myself. I was like, oh, this person seems nice, hire him. I wasn't focused in on that description or that central place like values. I really was taken by them, in the room. You're like, oh, you seem nice. Like, well, this will work out perfectly, and I think in some way I was hoodwinking myself, like they'll say whatever to get the gig. And in some way I was just like, oh, you know what? I just think the best of people. Well, I trust you'll be able to handle it. I think without that third party information, like the description or the values, you can kind of get away, get kind of led away with your gut. Do you see that happen sometimes?
I think most of the time. And in fact, I'll go a step further and say, not only did you sort of sit there and say that, but what you were actually doing was subconsciously you were saying, I have to freaking get back to work and I got to fill this spot. And you seem like you're breathing, and you might actually be nice. And I shouldn't have been there. And I can just teach you to do the job. And right. And because you seem smart enough, and you put that you were smart in your own marketing document, your resume.
Right.
And so then you turned around and you said something like, So we're a really great place to work. We have a great culture, whether you knew that the culture was good or not.
Mhm.
And we have these great things, and we go to happy hour on Fridays every once in a while.
Right.
And the pay's okay, but we have free coffee.
Geez,
Does it
Eric,
sound
it's like you're
somewhere you
at my
wanna
old
work?
firm. Yeah, there was also hot
Right.
chocolate too, which was cool.
Right. And then you say, does that sound like somewhere you want to work? And they say, great. And they say, sure.
Yeah.
And you sort of say, my budget is $15 to $18 an hour. I'll give you $17 an hour. Does that sound okay?
Oh, wow.
Sure. Okay, go see, Betty in HR.
Gosh, the overwhelming
Right?
sure.
Right, exactly. And then they may last about 3 months because they were like, wait, you guys said the coffee was good, and it's not, right? And so that's it. With us, and people who sort of follow a predictive hiring method, it's very standardized. We have absolute standardized scripts for the phone interview, for the in-person interview. We do testing, and when they actually get there, we only interview about 3 to 5 people per in person, and really it's about 3. I haven't seen it where it's gotten any more than that. We pretty much know before they walk in the office if we are going to like them or not, because we've already gone through the basic stuff. Can they do the job or not? And 90% of our questions are open-ended. So we just ask things like, what's your problem-solving process? By the way, almost all the questions are exactly the same, whether we're interviewing for somebody who's answering the phone or a senior lawyer position. The answers might be different. Somebody interviewing for a senior lawyer position might give a much better answer on what's your problem solving methods. Although I've had a lot of lawyers be really bad at that, right? Wow. They're like, why are you a lawyer? And then, and so we clearly sort of don't hire them. But they're all the same. And when they answer something, it's important to dig, right? And we're lawyers. We should be great at this. Right? We should be awesome at this. We can pick juries. We can pick, lots of different things. How come we can't hire better? So, we ask questions like, what's your problem solving method? And they say, most of the people will say something like, I do a chart and I do pros and cons, which is ridiculous. We could search their house and you'd never find.
Show me that list. Yeah.
Show me that. Right. But, some people will go through it, they go through it, but the responsibility on the person interviewing is very simple. They then need to say, tell me more about that. Mm. And once you sort of drill down, and you really want to drill down on the stories they're telling you. So we actually talk about this one in the book. We were interviewing somebody for a case management position, and I happened to be in the room, and we heard something a little bit odd, and it just was really quick in passing. And she said, "Well, I had to send flowers to a coworker once." Oh, tell me more about that. Oh, well, when I was, and she said when she was working, overseeing a bunch of people, she made somebody cry. Oh, tell us more. And then all of a sudden it got down to the fact that essentially she thought that being harsh with people was a really good quality, and that she would be great working in a law firm because she knew how to be tough and firm. Mm-hmm. And it was completely the opposite. She lacked empathy, which is what we look for more than anybody. So she had actually gotten through the resume part, the phone interview part, the testing part. Now she's almost done. Everybody's sitting there thinking she's great. She's almost done in the in-person interview. And if we didn't sort of just catch that little bit where she said, I had to send flowers to a coworker once, and then start asking the open-ended questions on that, and it took about 3 or 4 of them to get to the bottom. And she actually said she doesn't have empathy. And
so personal trainer
right there. Right?
Personal trainer.
That's it.
Right.
Perfect.
Working at a gym.
Yep. Right. everything was great, right? And if you don't listen, and if you don't ask the questions the same way to everybody, how is that an even playing field?
To keep with the theme of advice here, what's one thing that you can tell our listeners to start doing like right now, today, that would improve the culture at their law firms?
What could they do to, culture is a big thing, and I'm not going to say that there's just one thing. But if they have to do something, they have to start listening better, and they have to start asking questions of everybody. How do you like it here? Take people out to lunch. Start getting the pulse of things that are going. Find your biggest, especially if you're in the corner office, so to speak, who's your biggest fan, who really believes in you, and say, hey, I want to get things better here. I want to reduce our turnover. I want to make people like being here. What do we need to do? And just start from there.
So people want to learn more about you. They want to find this book. They want to see how you guys are doing it over there at Pacific Workers. How can they find you on the internet, Eric?
I do have a Twitter. I think it's at Real Eric Farber. And Facebook, Eric Farber. The Case for Culture is a website, thecaseforculture.com, which is sort of the book site. I do some speaking stuff. I don't do consulting, so I'm not trying to sell anybody a consulting package here. Just to be clear, because 90% of these books that are written these days seem to be about getting consulting gigs.
Oh yeah, coaching, yeah,
coaching gigs. I'm not a coach, but I do a reading list. I read an awful lot of books, and I'm getting a reading list together that I'm going to be sending some stuff out on the book site right now. You can find a whole bunch of listings of various books, but also what I call the top 10 books for running a law firm. And and you can sign up for a free chapter of the book, I believe, on the site, and you'll also get a subscribe to the reading list, which I'll send out. If you like these things, I'll try and summarize some of the books. We were going to start sending it out in April, but this crazy pandemic thing happened. I'm not making light of it. It's been, people are going to go through some crazy stuff. Yeah. But it's delayed the first installment of the reading list. So, but that's how they can find me. The book is available on Amazon, on Goodreads as well. And on Barnes & Noble. It's all the major sellers. And it did hit number one on Amazon in its categories. And it did get reviewed by Forbes, listed as one of the top 8 books to rethink managing relationships at work. That's it. It's available ebook, paperback, hardcover, and in a few weeks from now, the Audible will be out as well.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
Infinite Game by Simon Sinek.
Bam. Number 2, what is your favorite place?
My house.
Excellent.
Good
sure
place.
A lot of people are...
Everybody's feeling that now.
Yep, we're all feeling that one. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
I read New York Times. I read the Farnham blog that comes out every weekend, which I think is pretty amazing. And Tim Ferriss, Ryan Holiday, podcasts. The Tony Robbins Radio Hour is good. TED Talk stuff is good. I like Joe Rogan. There's a host of them that I sort of jump around. I think Tim Ferriss is probably still my favorite. I'm also really into this guy right now named Peter Attia, Attia. He's a doctor, and I highly recommend people to follow him on Instagram.
All right, everybody heard it here first. Number 4, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Wow. Does coffee count as a condiment?
I think we'll accept that.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, we've accepted bourbon before, so I mean that's okay.
We accepted salt once. I mean, we're really
salt.
loose.
Yeah. That's cool. All right. That works. Number 5, last one. After a long day or long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
I'm really not that exciting. I don't even actually drink that much, although I have some great stuff. Everybody always thinks about the drinking. I actually, I'll spend a weekend reading and I go to the gym a lot, or I used to, and we do all that stuff at home now, and that's it. I mean, I like to retool and reshape what I'm doing during the work. When I'm working, I'm focused. When I'm not, I'm at the beach and enjoying. I don't know there's that much unwinding. I do try to meditate every day, and I highly recommend people to get a good morning routine. It's the only way you can make it through all this stuff.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsomepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.